So welcome. Really excited to be joined by Boyd, Francis, and Tim. We got together last year and did a deeper dive into the 45th anniversary of the first World Lit Conference, and we're going to continue doing special presentations on each of the remaining six World Lit conferences to commemorate the 45th anniversary of those events and the significance of those in what became the Basic Text of Narcotics Anonymous. So we're going to get started, and we'll be introducing the rest of the guys here as we go through. But just want to do kind of a quick review of the first World Lit Conference, which had been 11 months earlier. Uh, the way to think about the first World Lit Conference is it laid a foundation for the how and why of the writing of the basic text. If we look back at the minutes from the first World Lit Conference, part of the why can be seen. They talk about how Jimmy Kay, one of the co-founders, won't write any new material. And so there was a sense that no new material is going to come out of California, out of the World Service Office, without some initiative from other members of the fellowship. And then one thing that really kind of always motivated people with creating literature for addicts is this idea that, without a book, many of those who might be enjoying new lives will surely die of our disease, never knowing that help is possible. Which really kind of ties into what we see in the basic text about the tired old lie. That was such an important thing to Jimmy. Um, the how, so the how of the first World Lit Conference, how do we get this? First, this kind of idea that the material exists within the experience of all the members. So the theme from the first World Lit Conference is "You Are the Book," and that really established at the first World Lit Conference that the material for any literature for Narcotics Anonymous exists in the members who are there. The second how of how to get literature that came out of the first World Lit Conference was the handbook for Narcotics Anonymous literature committees. These came out of the workshops that they had held over that 2-day conference. So they had a workshop on gathering literature, a workshop on basic text development, a workshop on pamphlets, a workshop on personal stories, a workshop on newsletters, a workshop on finance, and a workshop on local literature committees. I'd really like to invite Boyd, Tim, and Francis in at this point for any reflections or observations about the importance or significance of this creation of a handbook.
Sure. My name's Tim. The Narcotics Anonymous Literature Handbook was really instrumental in not only helping start literature committees locally, but also newsletters, because communication was one of the biggest issues in A at that time. And they could get that word out through the newsletters, form those literature committees, which can then help write this book that's being planned.
I'd like to segue into that. Francis, my name. And so the newsletter piece is like there was a newsletter workshop at the First World Literature Conference by Buddy Kay from Northern California. And he had started the mainline newsletter just prior to that conference. And it becomes like a hub of communication for the conferences, the literature conferences. And so, like, as I'm going through these mainline newsletters, there's like a wealth of history in there where we're seeing Bo S report out about the conferences, but also announcing the purpose of each conference. And so there's like, if you're a history sleuth, there's a lot of newsletters out there that have like really vital history in them, and to be discovered. So there, it's not just the history of the conferences, but I'm seeing literature in there. I've seen 3 different IPs that have been featured in newsletters prior to them being published in as IPs. So if you're looking, I'd look in the old newsletters for like Illuminati, Da Vinci Code, NA history stuff. So thanks.
Thanks, Francis. Boyd, will you share your analogy of, like, you brought up an analogy with the AA grapevine, just for context and differences in communication?
Chris, you're going to have to refresh my memory. I brought up an analogy with the great. I'm glad I did. What did I say?
Well, you said it was the Facebook of yesteryear.
Oh, okay. Yes. And of course, that's what the newsletters were in Narcotics Anonymous at the time. It's how other addicts, found out what was going on in different areas of the fellowship around the United States. And if they happened to venture out into other countries in the world, they found out what was going on, in that particular area where the newsletter was. What was interesting about this handbook is that I recall Greg P. On a cassette tape talk that he did, talking about how the handbook was actually developing the plan, and the rest of the work was actually working the plan. So wanted just to add that, and thank you for my recollection there, Chris. I appreciate your
Yeah,
reminding.
and I always appreciate how you bring up things like you used to have to pay for a long distance phone call. You had to do these things that um, people who were maybe born more recently don't live in that type of environment and world. And so just kind of understanding the context of how different communication was at that time and how significant newsletters were certainly as a part of that. The handbook really, I think in some ways, created a framework and guidance that empowered local groups of NA members to say, we can go ahead and start trying to develop literature. Boyd, I'm going to ask if you could actually kind of pick up on the next slides.
I wanted to just touch on personal stories for a second, if that's okay, Chris.
Please do.
So, like we have personal stories in the basic text, but we see a lot of personal stories in the newsletters as well. And for instance, I seen a story by Bob Bergs in the mainline newsletter, and like he didn't have a story in the basic text, so we're seeing people's personal stories that have made contributions to Narcotics Anonymous in the newsletters. Uh, People, I hear this repeated all the time. They used to say that Bob Barrett like was the only person that had two stories in our literature in two different places. But like there's in the NA Way magazine, the second issue has somebody's story in there, which is one addict's experience, which is Jim Miller's story. And then he ends up having a story in the basic text. So we have two different people with two different stories in two different places in our literature, and like those are the kind of discoveries that we can find in looking through all this history, not only like in the newsletters, but in the personal stories. There's a wealth of history, uh, if you want what we have is Bill Brooks's story, and there's like history about the South in that story, or Gina H's story, No Excuse for Loneliness, has history in it about the Nashville Fellowship. So it's out there if you're looking. Look to the stories and look for the stories in the newsletters too. Sorry for interrupting, Chris.
No interruption. And I could see us when we're recording for the 45th anniversary of the 7th World Lit Conference, really kind of spending some time talking about the significance of personal stories as composed to primary recovery literature. Boyd, why don't you pick up and talk a little bit about these flyers and so forth?
Yeah, I'd be glad to, Chris. So, as you see here, this is the flyer that went out announcing the literature conference, and it's held in Lincoln, Nebraska, September the 8th through the 14th. What's important about this is that it goes a full 11 months since the very first literature conference in Wichita. So it's held in the federal building, and it does follow the 10th World Convention. And as you can also see, it's also got a lot of AA influence in it. I love the theme of this particular conference is "Come Help Us Write the Big Book." And here's a flyer for the 10th World Convention. And the the ties that bind us together were the mantra. And I want to introduce a man named Jim N to you from Lincoln, Nebraska. Jim got clean November 2nd, 1971, sadly passed away December 3rd, 2013, shortly after his 42nd anniversary. He attended the first and the second World Literature Conferences, and I'm actually going to pass it over to Tim to give us a little bit more background of Jim.
Well, Jim's has not only a contribution to starting NA in Nebraska, Iowa, and Missouri, but Kansas for sure. And he actually got a what they call a DWI in Salina, Kansas, in 1971, and that's how this all got started. And Pathfinder organization had started recovery and got him out of jail, had him starting to do a talk show on radio, started taking calls from addicts, and found out that addicts had a place that they might be able to go. That's how Anonymous meetings got started in Salina, Kansas. Now, Jim had also written his story for the basic text. It's called Long Distance Recovery. It didn't make the cut, but it is a great historical piece. And if you listen to his early talks, there's a lot of the information in that story. Jim was instrumental. He was the Johnny Appleseed of NA. That's a name that our founder, Jimmy Kay, gave him. And he was just one of those humble guys that from up until the time he died was doing service for whoever and however he could.
Thanks so much, Tim. We'll listen to Jim speaking at the 10th World Convention in Narcotics Anonymous with a picture that Tim provided just recently to us of him at the podium. And that photo is courtesy of Ed.
I don't know what. It's a change. None of it's a big change. You know? We're standing on our own 2 feet. A lot of us here had to have AA hold our hand, but we're standing on our own 2 feet. And with God's help, we'll put together some kind of a book so that I got something to give this guy besides my story, which he may not be able to identify with, and a white booklet that's, sometimes as inadequate as I feel.
Before we move on to kind of the next slide on some of the memories that need to be preserved, just really curious to hear any reactions from you three on what Jim was sharing from the podium there at the 10th World Convention.
Well, Chris, I like Jim's honesty that he talks about feeling inadequate. I think he, just gets very, very honest there about that, about how he feels about helping to write the book.
And I think that that's something that's shared by many people who were involved with the writing of the basic text, kind of questioning, who am I? What gives me the ability to do this? Am I capable of doing it, and so forth?
Yeah, he definitely acknowledges that the White Book, though it helped so many addicts, wasn't enough. We needed to expand that.
I kind of feel like there was this sentiment about, like the old guard in California that were okay with just the little white book, but there was a lot of new people that recognized that we needed a book, and then they recognized that it wasn't going to come out of Southern California, and so they took it on themselves to get us over the line, whatever it took. And and the little white book wasn't adequate. It was a great start, it was a great format for us to follow in the basic text, but it wasn't enough. And thank God for these people like Jim Ann and Bo F to have a vision for us to get a book.
Boyd, why don't you keep talking about some of these important things with Jim?
I'll be glad to. So this is there are just memories out there that about actions that were taken to help us get this book. They really and truly just they have to be preserved. They have to be told, and this is one of them right here. About informing the fellowship of the Second World Literature Conference about the how were they going to get stamps to send flyers to people around the country, letting them know about this. And we're going to let Jim tell you about it.
And maybe it's worth noting why wasn't there funding to do this?
There was not any funding to do this, Chris, because this was an unfunded project. This was funded by the members who came. The members who came to Wichita paid for their own travel expenses. The members who came to Nebraska came under their own steam. They were the ones who funded it themselves. It is not that the World Service Office would not have liked to have funded this. They just did not have the money to fund it. Simple as that. And you got to remember that this was a very early in the service structure of the NA Fellowship. And so Boas being elected the chairperson is only the second literature chairperson of that service structure. And so you've got you basically got people kind of making their own way, trying to figure out exactly how this works. But that's something that's really important about this particular conference and all the other conferences is this whole project was unfunded.
Thanks for that context. We'll listen to Jim here.
Yeah.
I've seen changes. I've seen people in this program love in a lot of strange ways. We're trying to get some postage for the literature. Right? And some people with, just a few months in the program. And they went down to the blood bank, $15. $15 buys a roll of stamps, and that roll of stamps sent the flyers. If you didn't get a flyer, it's because we ran out of blood.
So this desire to get invitations out to as many people as possible and this desire to make sure that as many people were included. What was the story, Boyd, about how they got the stuff printed?
Well, the story is that so Jim knew a printer who gave him a ream of paper. The printer actually used to be or was an AA member. And so he said, here, I'm going to give you a ream of paper so you can make the flyers. I'll actually even run them off for you. And what, some of us tongue in cheek have said that, well, truthfully, in researching this history, we have seen the hand of AA stretch out and help the NA members. What we've often been wondered about is whether or not it's like, let's help these people, these NA members, because we don't want them in our AA meetings, or I tend to think it's more of a noble thing myself. So
get that stuff out there, due to this effort, like to understand that NA members are selling blood to buy postage, to send invitations, to write literature for the addict who is still suffering. Just like a really important memory to preserve and recognizing, willing to go to any lengths. Francis,
it speaks volumes to willingness.
Francis, I'll ask you to kind of bring us in with newsletter stuff here.
Yeah, so here's something from the Mid-America Regional Newsletter, and it's a great piece of history, and I'm going to let Tim take this one.
One of the things written in here is the big book of Narcotics Anonymous is now being written, and you are it. People have been working on the idea of publishing this for a long time, and at a long last, it has become a reality. Last fall, the Literature Committee had a conference in Wichita, at which time the basic plans were made, and many people have been working hard on gathering information and compiling this into form so that we can have a book. Your input is vital for this task, and you will all have something to offer because you all have a story and a program of recovery. Plus, we all have ideas, and they all can be used in one form or another in this effort to put this much needed book together. It will take time and a lot of hard work, but the rewards will be great. So plan to attend this convention while you are already in this part of the country for the 10 WCNA in Wichita. Lincoln is just a short shot north of Wichita, so plan on attending. For more information, just contact this number. I do want, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I
Talk
was
about
wanting to
that.
comment, the Mid-America Regional Newsletter, actually, the Literature Committee for Mid-America Region was formed the same day the region was formed, and they met 2 weeks after the region was formed. Before there was a regional meeting, before any elections, there was a literature committee. And they started the newsletter. They actually had well, this was July of 79, but they actually had a mailing list for the newsletters by January of 1980. So these newsletters were being written and produced right off the bat before we even really had elections to have officers for the region. This communication was that important.
And thanks for your efforts in preserving these newsletters and making them available to the fellowship. So this is the old federal building is where it's held, and Francis is great about tracking down, various photos. And so this is the best photo that we could find of where this was held. And we'll talk a little bit, how did a bunch of addicts end up at a federal building shortly, but want to move over and talk a little bit about Linda, who had attended all 7 of the World Lit conferences and had served as a secretary and librarian. And her story, Pothead, appears in editions 2 through 5 of the basic text. Tim's going to read from her journal entries about the Second World Lit Conference. But before you do that, is there anything that you would like to add about Linda for context?
Linda was very young, very eager to help in any way possible, and she still is today. It's great having her as a resource. These journals that I'm going to be reading from was actually something that she wrote during this time in her early recovery, and it was just another foresight to preserve this information that most people or minutes even wouldn't have. So.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and read that first paragraph from her journal? That'd be great.
Okay, this is an entry from September of 1980. She states, after the convention, a group of people went north to Lincoln, Nebraska. They set up shop in the side lobby of the old post office building. Right there among the 10-foot windows, columns, and marble floors, they set up a chalkboard, tables, folding chairs, and typewriters and started working. I joined them a couple of days later. I had never gone anywhere by myself before, but I thought since I attended the first meeting in Wichita a year ago, I should go to this one. So I got my map and got in my car and drove to Lincoln.
Thanks, Tim. Really appreciate your contributions, finding these things and adding them for this great context. And at some point in time, we're going to have to show a picture of a map because most people today are not used to pulling out a map to figure out how to get from one state to the other. So mentioned about the location of the Second World Lit Conference, that it's being held at the federal building. And so the person who's played a role in this was actually the first female elected mayor of Lincoln, named Helen Bosalis, who was mayor from 1975 to 1983. And she also served as the 39th president of the United States Conference of Mayors. And we're going to listen to Jim talk about her role in the Second World Lit Conference, And this is audio from that 1980 Lit Conference in Lincoln.
Mention the mayor's name because she got us this place. The history are the mayor's interested. The mayor's secretary's son has had some problems a few years back. The Narcotics Anonymous people went out and 12-stepped him. And he's still using, but it helped. And we clarified some things for her on 12-step call and family. You know, and the mayor's saying that we're doing some good because her secretary's head cleared up for a few days and she could get back to work. You know? And so she's willing to bend over backwards for us. And she said, you know, if there's anything we need, try to get a hold of it.
So it's always wonderful to come across non-addict friends, particularly if they're a public official who are showing support for a group of people who society often doesn't embrace or look to support at times. So that's how they ended up there. Boyd, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, so kind of a synopsis here or a summary of the members who came to the Second World Lit Conference. There were 37 members from 8 states and 1 from Canada. They're from California, Georgia, Kansas, Nebraska, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, and Vancouver, British Columbia is what we have in the minutes. Tim has also unearthed 2 other states that were written about in a newsletter, which were Iowa and Texas. And what's really important is that there were 7 members that attended this conference that also attended the first World Literature Conference. And the reason for that is just continuity. But what was really important is that 2 Board of Trustee members, Bob B. and Greg P. attended. Now, why was this important? So, let's just say you're part of the old guard in Southern California, and you've got these young addicts getting clean and from the South and from the Midwest, and they're starting to have these conferences about writing a book, you know, for the NA basic text. And of course, you know, we're the old guard here in California. What did they think we're just gonna, you know, roll over with this? So there, to say there was definitely just some concerns in Southern California. With Bob and Greg showing up, Board of Trustee members, this lent, you know, validity and weight to this movement. So this was one of the most important things that happened at this conference. So remember, I had told you that this was an unfunded project, and so we're gonna listen to George R. tell you a little bit about how he got to Lincoln.
Bo kept telling me to go to the World Convention and then the Second World Literature Conference in Lincoln, Nebraska. The 10th World Convention was in Wichita, Kansas. We were broke. I mean, we had no money. I was 20 years old. And I actually, to go to that, I sold my washer and dryer and I bought a train ticket because I couldn't afford to fly. And it took me a day and a half to get out there on the train. Now, when I got there, I had $70 for the 4 days at the convention, the 7 days at the literature conference, and the day and a half train ride there and the day and a half ride back. I think I was broke before we got to the literature conference. I didn't have a place to stay. And this became an MO for the literature conferences. Just come, we'll figure all that stuff out when you get there, you know.
Any comments on that, the willingness,
So there's huge amounts of willingness. Yeah. Sold his washer and dryer to go attend a conference.
Well, I've heard stories of people hitchhiking cross country to get to these as well, and
riding horses and riding bicycles and sleeping under tables and
I haven't heard the whole horse story.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one either. So
So as we get into the conference, as mentioned, Bob and Greg attending were really important, and they were featured on day one after a roll call and introductions to provide updates on literature origins. Bob spoke about the early days of NA and early days of literature, and then Greg spoke of more recent efforts and so forth. Bob had been a member of the Board of Trustees, and as Francis referenced, he had a story in the White Book called Something Meaningful. And then the basic text, his story is I found the only NA meeting in the world. And he passed in 2015 with 53 years of recovery. And we're going to listen to audio from that first session of the Second World Lit Conference of Bob talking about some of his thoughts on this effort.
My name is Bob, and I'm an addict in Los Angeles. I know that we need this definitive text in order to reach more people, because there is a difference in the language. We have a language of the heart in which we communicate with, that we are better understood in terms of what we want to do and how to do it. And I think that's very important that this be stated. And it has nothing to do with the time factor of how long you've been here, you're here. And how did you get here? What have you gained since you have arrived? It becomes more important. I think that becomes a factor. And we do need you. Yes, the housewife and those other people do need to know there is a place for them to recover where they can talk about these things and not be afraid of being ostracized. To stand up and be a person, to be counted as a being.
So hear this theme and thread again of, needing to expand the ways for identification, and really speaking about the need for literature that is in a language that addicts can relate to. And I particularly pick up on the word ostracized, that how often individuals with addiction feel ostracized by society, and that this program of recovery that Narcotics Anonymous is offering can provide a pathway to being a contributing member of your family and community. Greg is also a member of the Board of Trustees. He co-wrote the NA Tree, which was the first service structure. He wrote 2 IPs, number 9, Living the Program, and number 12, The Triangle's Helpless Session. His story in the basic text is titled I Was Different, and he passed away in 1999 with 28 years clean. We've often focused on this 1972 letter to the fellowship from the Board of Trustees that authorized work on a hardcover book, just to illustrate that there had been a desire for this, but it really wasn't until 5 years later when Bo went to the 7th World Convention in San Francisco that the initiative was taken to get the momentum and kind of effort going that resulted in literature conferences and resulted in the publication of the basic text. But this letter from 1972 has got a lot of valuable insights because they're articulating a lot of the same reasons for why NA needs to develop a book. And so this is Greg P. reading an excerpt of this letter on day 1 of the Second World Lit Conference.
We need your help. As you know, the Board of Trustees has authorized the preparation of a hardcover book entitled Narcotics Anonymous. We enlarge the present pamphlet of that name. We plan to have a much expanded description of the drug addict, the drug dependency problem in general, on our program of recovery, what it is and how it works. We hope that this new book will fill the same needs as AA's big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, which has been so important in our recovery. Our successful AA's big book has been for us. We desperately need to present our program of recovery and way of life in terms which are more meaningful to the newcomer who cannot identify with alcoholism. How many have died because of this lack of identity? Can we forget our primary purpose? We need a vehicle for our program and a cohesive base upon which NA can grow.
Any comments, reflections on this? I'm going to turn it to you, Boyd, to kind of talk about some of the important decisions that occurred at the Second World Lit Conference.
Of course. So we learned through the minutes that one of the most important decisions was that Greg suggested that we use the NA White Book as a guide, as the headings in the NA Little White Book as headings of the chapters, and this comes from the minutes. Also, 2 additional chapters were added just for today, dealing with spiritual maintenance, and more will be revealed for ongoing recovery. We also learned from the minutes that Greg meant for he had hopes that for more to be revealed would be a version of A Vision for You, AA's version, A Vision for You.
Which is in the big book.
Yeah, exactly. So organizing the input, how do you do that? So a structure was decided upon. Input submitted since the first literature conference needed to be organized. On day 3, the conference decided to break into workshops and put assorted material into the appropriate sections. The easiest way was to go through the material and cut it up and paste related material together. So there were 800 pages of material collected for the Second World Lit Conference, and it was assembled in a unique fashion. Material was first cut and filed under different chapter headings. The material was then pasted into topics within each chapter. We'll introduce you to Motorcycle Ed. He got clean May 2nd, 1977 in Marietta, Georgia. And he attended the 2nd and the 4th World Lit conferences. We're going to listen to Ed tell you a little bit about the cut and paste process.
David, the second one that I showed up at, the real treat for me was get to do what all the other people had got to do in kindergarten that I didn't get to do because I didn't get to go to kindergarten, was little itty bitty scissors and cut up pieces of paper and take the paste stick and put it on the back and paste it on another piece of paper. And the kid in me, of course, I didn't know what to call it at that time, just went berserk. You know, hot lickety doggy dum. You know, and
Why don't you describe kind of like what this sheet represents?
Yeah, these 2 slides that are here, you've got, this is the cut and paste, actual cut and paste that were taken out of Joseph Proctor's archives. And it's like, you've got a handwritten note up there. You've got another typed note. You've got a different handwritten note right there. You've got different typewritten notes, and then 2 more typewritten notes at the bottom. And that's actually a representation of the cut and paste of how NA's book was developed. Introduce you to Charles Kay. He attended 3 World Lit conferences. His story is An Indian Without a Tribe, which appears in the 1st through the 5th editions of the basic text. And we're going to let Charles tell you about the cut and paste process.
Hi, everybody. I'm Charles Kay, and I'm an addict. Some of the things you might not, that they touched on a little bit, like the cut and paste, that's how the whole book was put together. People cutting single lines out, pasting them on paper, photocopying it, passing it out to like everybody here. You would read it and go, no, I don't like that. We want to change that. So you cut that out, you paste it again, you re-photocopy it, and you kept doing that till you got to something you liked in your workshop. Then it went to the main group, and the literature committee was doing consensus before consensus was popular. That's how every line of the book was approved by consensus.
We're going to pick back up with Tim, and Tim's going to read another entry from Linda's journaling about the Second World Lit Conference.
Thanks, Chris. In this same September 1980, she wrote, I was a touch typist, so when I got there, they immediately put me to work typing up the material. They had huge stacks of handwritten scraps that different people from all over the country and the world had submitted. The material covered a wide range of subjects. Some of it was good, some of it was bad. What was important was not how grammatically correct each specific piece was, but the essential wisdom or truth the writer was trying to convey. The group established an overall outline of what topics needed to be covered in the book and posted it on the blackboard. The next step of the process was to take these little scraps of paper, these little gems of wisdom, and place them in their respective places within the outline. The book was begun.
Thanks, Tim. And I think it's worth just pausing for a minute to really allow those who are watching this to reflect on what a unusual and unique way that this book was authored. Multiple authors, but not everything that author submitted became part of it. But that searching through the submissions to say, hey, this resonates, or hey, this is good. And then like a puzzle, where does it belong? Oh, it fits here and it fits there. So just a really unique way, and so thankful for Tim's contributions to this presentation and digging up this insight that Linda recorded in her journal. And looking at the minutes, there were some additional issues that were discussed. And this was kind of in addition to the structure and sorting through input. And one of was around the inclusion of the word honest in relation to a desire to stop using. So if you look in the minutes, you have Bo making a case that honest desire is necessary because we have a more serious disease and need more honesty. And Dean, who is from Orange County, California, saying, this seems to go against our third tradition. And he also feels that newcomers are little equipped to handle honesty and that it should not be connected with the desire to stop using. So there was discussion about this and a motion that Dean made that to strike honest from the association with desire, but that motion failed and that honest was left on the board. Now, honest desire is something that existed in NA's literature, starting probably with the Buff book, but certainly in White. This is the 1976 White book, where it talks about there is only one requirement for membership: the honest desire to stop using. And while the word honest desire never appears in the 12 traditions or in tradition 3, it appeared in what is the Narcotics Anonymous program up until 1986, when they revised the Little White Book, which then resulted in revisions to the basic text, resulting in the third revised basic text, third edition revised. So kind of at the conclusion of the conference, they had developed a following final outline of chapter headings. And so you can see a preface, an introduction, a dedication, chapter 1, who's an addict, and here are the areas of input that people could write on. Things like self-diagnosis, disease concept, progression. Chapter 2, what is the NA program? Chapter 3, why are we here? Chapter 4, talking about the steps, talking about spiritual indifference, talking about substitution, staying clean from everything. Chapter 5, what can I do? And sometimes people ask about promises. Number E has promises listed there. Tradition 6, chapter 6 on the traditions, chapter 7 on recovery and relapse. Chapter 8, we do recover, and again, kind of breaking down the various subpoints that make up or should comprise the chapter. Chapter 9, just for today, which again is a new chapter proposed by Greg, and chapter 10, more will be revealed, and then ending with stories and an appendix. Francis has talked about the significance of newsletters, and he's been helpful in looking at some of the rainbow connections. And there's a history of the Second World Lit Conference that appears in a copy of the final minutes, but is also reprinted in the 1980 issue from October, The Rainbow Connection. And we want to read that in its entirety. So Francis, do you mind reading through that history?
I will. Thank you. Although relatively few of the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous stood in the Lincoln Federal Building in September 1980, the spirits of our contributors and of those still suffering addicts were all around us, encouraging us, sharing with us their hope and pain. Those who enjoyed the actual effort were but servants of a larger whole. From the moment that the early arrivals gazed into the empty hall in the federal building, it was apparent that this was the time and the place for the fulfillment of a dream. Men and women who had little or previous acquaintance of one another embraced each other readily, eager to enjoy what each had to share. During that first day, there was a pervasive sense of awe. The impact of what we could accomplish sank into the group conscience, and we were excited. Although few individuals had much experience and the group had none, there was divine cooperation throughout the conference. The subject matter was so large, yet our outline work proceeded along a natural course. Our outline and the material fell together uncannily. Much of the time, the thoughts most appropriate fairly leaped from the page. From the hundreds of pages of collected material, we all sorted, compiled, and read, and we read. The ties that bind us together were strengthened. We were made whole by our work. As could be expected, there were problems with weariness, impatience, and ego. We all wanted so much, and we had come so far. We all had to deal with frustration of working with others on a common goal, perhaps for the first time. Yet we were able to overcome these very human obstacles and to offer encouragement to our fellow addicts. Our successes tempered our despair, and we reassured one another. As long days grew into larger nights, we gave each other back rubs and hugs, pausing often for meditation and prayer. We fought need, strength in maintaining contact with our higher power, and we endured long hours, personalities, and problems. As a result of addicts meeting in Lincoln, Nebraska in September 1980, a book, a dream, will be realized. But we could be inaccurate to say that we had written a book. We all came from many parts of the country and many walks of life. We have all, by the grace of our higher power and the help of our fellow addicts, survived a killing disease. In an effort to continue to survive, we have met here to share our experience, strength, and hope. The book is just a reflection of this effort. It is this spirit that our book will come forth. Addicts all over the world will have the Narcotics Anonymous book for comfort and for study. When we find ourselves by ourselves, we need not be alone. We will have our book, and we will have each other. Thank you.
Thanks, Francis. What are your reactions, and what's the experience like for you reading that?
Well, I'm really humbled to be able to read that. Like I felt, like the presence of, like the higher power that they were talking about being there. I really liked the writing of Bo during this time and expressing, like the presence of a higher power guiding us, like not only like you were talking about the hand of AA being of assistance to us. I really feel like the hand of our collective higher power guiding us through this process too, and being able to like access some of these writings that express that is just really meaningful for me. Thanks.
I've got two thoughts, and it comes up a few times, but I'm always really struck by the ability to have a vision that addicts all over the world will have the NA book for comfort and for study. And I don't have great data in front of me, but my two benchmarks are in 77 when Bo goes to the Seventh World Convention, there's 700 some meetings worldwide, so not a lot of meetings. And by the time the book is published in 83 or approved in 82, there's about 3,000 meetings worldwide. So this idea that for a fellowship that was so small and had grown so slowly, by the time it was 30 years from the first NA meeting in 53 to the book being published, to have that sense while they were working on this, that this could actually reach addicts all over the world, I think is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I think that like Bo is one of my heroes and deserves recognition for like there's like hallmark moments in Narcotics Anonymous, and then him going to the World Convention in San Francisco and getting this book done is a huge piece of the history. And like I don't know if it was his vision to start with, but you know, like as it developed and you know, like I think it changed the way we write our literature. You know, like this is we still write our literature collectively, and you know, it's huge. Like it's a huge deal. Thank you, Bo.
So you also did a great job of digging through some newsletters, in the December 1980 issue of the Rainbow Connection includes reflections on the Second World Lit Conference by Motorcycle Ed, and Francis was generous enough with his time to reach out to Motorcycle Ed and record him reading what he wrote in December of 1980.
Hello, my name is Motorcycle Ed, and I am an addict. I would like to share about the experience I had in Lincoln, Nebraska, from September 8th to September the 14th. What the event was about was the World Literature Conference. In my head, I really didn't know how many people were working on the book, so my basic reason for going was to find out how many and how much was being done. What I found was very surprising, to say the least. There were people from all over the U.S. and even one guy from British Columbia, Vancouver. I thought it would be all one-sided and all that stuff, but I found out the people there were very open-minded and listened to everyone. As you know, the newcomer can sometimes give you the answer you've been looking for a long time. The range of sobriety, as I saw it, was a little over 16 years to 1 week clean. It's hard to say exactly how many were there. Some were there in the beginning of the week, but had to leave, and some came in late. The local people were very helpful, because some would drop in on their lunch hour or during classes. Most would come in afterward and help until we had to leave the building or meeting time. I've been clean at a time for 3.5 years, and I've got to see the Spirit at work in a lot of different ways. For new people, meetings grow in numbers and more groups in clubhouses and all their activities. But what happened in Lincoln touched my heart, and tears came to my eyes when read what we had already done in chapter 1. I've not even been involved in the making of a book in all my life. It was so, words seem inadequate to try and explain the way I felt. In my heart, I believe the Spirit wants us to have our book and I can see some of the ways in which he or it is making it possible for us to have. The program is one of change, and it is really a change for me to sit down and to do this writing. Yours in loving fellowship of the Spirit, love, Motorcycle Ed.
So just another great insight and reflection on what one member's experience was. Again, credit to Tim, who really contributed a lot of new material to this presentation. Tim's going to share a little bit about the newsletter out of Lincoln, Nebraska called The Paper. The January 1981 issue includes articles on what Lincoln was tasked with after the Second World Lit Conference and the need for financial support.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, there's two things that actually stand out in this. The first is Lincoln. They would say Lincoln and the surrounding region. Lincoln was part of Mid-America region. We were 4 states at this point. Within a few months, we became 5 states when Oklahoma joined as well. But it states that the Lincoln and surrounding region had been given the responsibility to complete the 4th chapter of the NA Big Book, How It Works. And as you can see in this, Lincoln had set up a workshop starting at 6 p.m. Friday, starting January 23rd, for them to do that. Another thing that was in this article, well, okay, we'll go to this, but
Sorry.
that's all right. They did lay out the agenda that was in the book, just like what had been mentioned earlier. But there was something on the back page of this that I would like to read that I'm not sure if we even have on here.
Probably not. Go ahead and read it.
It just says the Second World Literature Conference was a miracle of what we can do, but now what our book needs is bucks. We're expecting contributions from other areas, and we need everyone's help. The faster we raise money, the faster we'll see it in print. Save an addict. Put your money where your life is. Now, I know that Newton, Kansas had recently opened a clubhouse right before this conference happened. And they did a fundraiser, and immediately $75 was sent to the Lit Conference to help with this effort. And I know a lot of the groups and areas were just now being, actually areas were kind of new in our region, but groups were definitely sending money, raising money and sending it on to the Lit Conference for this effort.
Well, these are just tremendous contributions that you've brought, Tim, and want to thank you so much. Just kind of a couple things in conclusion. The minutes when they were sent out from the Second World Lit Conference included this Lincoln Literature Conference summary, and this is just an excerpt from it. And it speaks to what's next. It says the Third World Literature Conference will be held in Memphis, Tennessee in early February of 1981. The purpose of the conference will be to draw a consensus for each chapter. The biggest need we have for material is in the area of the 12 traditions. Please pass the word and encourage members to write and send in material on the traditions. If we achieve consensus at Memphis, the search for stories will begin. So I want to thank Tim, Boyd, and Francis for joining and participating in this special recording in acknowledgement of the 45th anniversary of the Second World Literature Conference. And I'm really excited that you'll be able to go over to the Living Clean podcast in order to hear a specially recorded episode with Francis and Mason that includes a number of the members of the Second World Lit Conference. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks for having me.